Megan Thee Stallion is back in court, this time to testify against a blogger who she says has been harassing her for years since she was shot by fellow artist Tory Lanez. The rapper is suing influencer Milagro Grams, whose real name is Milagro Cooper, for defamation, emotional distress, and this last one here for circulating an explicit deepfake video of her online. Meg Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, took jurors back to the day of that July 2020 shooting. Lanez, whose real name is Daystar Peterson, was found guilty of shooting her in the foot and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Joining us now is legal affairs journalist Megan Cuniff. She's been following this trial incredibly closely, and she was in court today. Megan, what did we hear from Megan Thee Stallion in court, and what did you see in terms of just general feel of that hearing and her demeanor?
Yeah, we heard testimony about what it's been like sitting in the courtroom and hearing these vitriolic rants about her, and what it was like to sit there when jurors were shown a really horrible sexually explicit video of her that, of course, is not actually her, but it was a digital alteration to make it look like her. And that's a key part of the case. And there really was just, I think, a tone of everyone kind of hanging on her every word, which is kind of how it goes in a trial when a witness testifies. But she had a real presence in the courtroom, and the jury was definitely, captivated and really interested to hear from her finally after days of testimony and hearing about these things that had happened to her.
A lot of people following this closely online have talked about the bombshells that have sort of surfaced throughout this trial. Could you take us through those? What has stood out to you as something that maybe was unexpected that happened in court, or just a nugget of information you got that hadn't been released publicly prior to this?
Yeah, I think this morning was really a dramatic moment when a man who used to work as a moderator for Milagro in her online streams, which is really common because there's so much traffic and so much chatter going on, that you'll have somebody else who takes care of that and works really closely with the person who's doing the show. And this was about how he quit and really had a parting of ways with her over the tone and direction of things. And he started weeping when he talked about just how vitriolic things were. He talked about how people were threatening to commit suicide, and he broke down and he really started sobbing. Sometimes in court, we'll see people get emotional and they're able to keep their composure and keep going. But he actually turned and had his back to the gallery and sobbed as the judge called an abrupt 5-minute recess. So I'd say that was the most dramatic moment. It's, of course, debatable what was the most important, but there's been a lot of testimony about, I think, a lot of stuff that's already been in the record, but this morning was quite a moment.
We often hear when people talk about defamation cases or libel cases that the burden of proof can be so high. Is that the case here, or is there a good shot that the prosecution could come out on top?
Yes, I mean, of course, the big thing is showing actual malice here. And another claim is that she intentionally inflicted emotional distress by working with Tory Lanez, the rapper who's in prison for shooting Megan. And so malice is kind of baked into the case in all the claims. And it will be a real test of the new Florida law, too, the promotion of the digitally altered image, because that could set up an appeal later on. But right now, I think the jury is really just focused on the testimony that they're hearing, and they're hearing quite a reiteration of the trial and the shooting that happened. And it's, of course, Megan's lawyers' attempts to show that Lanez is guilty and that Milagro doesn't really have much to go with on the claims that she's making against Megan.
I mean, given that Florida has some new laws that could be at play here, is there any sort of recent criminal case that we could look at to say maybe there's some sort of precedent?
I'm not. It's always hard to make definitive statements about whether there's ever been a test of that law. But with it just being enacted in January 2024.